I walked into that day like it was any other. Woke up at 5, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood at the kitchen counter sipping it. My wife was still asleep in the bedroom. I'd been running the bakery for years, so early mornings felt normal, almost comforting. The house was quiet. I remember watching the light come in through the blinds, slicing across the linoleum in the kitchen. Thought about the day ahead, deliveries, the usual rush for fresh bread, maybe the special orders for the weekend. Nothing felt off, not right then. I pulled on my work boots, shrugged into my jacket, and stepped outside. The air was a little damp, smelled like pine and the leftover chill of early spring. Drove to the bakery in my old pickup, the one I've had since way back. That morning, I was thinking about how the tires felt wobbly. Figured I'd check them later. I parked out back and got to work, unlocked the doors, turned on the lights, started the ovens, ran through the usual routine. I've never been a fancy guy, but I always tried to keep things in line. We had sacks of coffee stacked in the storeroom near the flour. My wife and I'd started adding a coffee corner to the bakery a few years back. It wasn't Starbucks or anything, but folks liked grabbing a cup in the morning. Seemed like a decent idea at the time. She came in around 7. She usually handled the front, greeting customers and taking orders. She could chat folks up better than me. People said she had a nice laugh. I used to like hearing it, especially on slow afternoons when we'd close early and sit around the empty tables. I can't remember the last time we did that before everything changed, but I know we used to. Sometimes I'd watch her from the kitchen, moving around with a certain grace, even in an apron. Her hair pinned up, or maybe just tied back with a rubber band. When we were younger, I loved to watch her. I guess I still did out of habit. We'd hired some help a while ago. Seasonal folks mostly, kids from around town who wanted part-time work after school. But that year, we hired a guy from out of state. He came in looking for any job. I heard his accent, asked where he was from. He mumbled something about having family in the next state over, but he didn't talk much. Tall, skinny. Wore a baseball cap. Decent at washing dishes and sweeping floors. I didn't think twice about him. He was just a kid needing some cash. Business was steady. We got our regulars, old ladies wanting a loaf of rye, tired dads picking up donuts for their kids. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Owned it free and clear, too. That was something I was proud of. Took us years to get it out of debt. My nephew sometimes came in on weekends to learn the ropes. He was interested in the business, or so he said. I liked the idea of passing it on to someone in the family. My wife never said she wanted it for herself. She liked helping, but she never called it her dream. It was always my dream. I used to figure she was fine tagging along. That morning, we got through the rush with no issues. Bread sold out by 9, muffins gone by 10. A good day, normal day. She and I barely talked, but that wasn't unusual. Married folks have quiet times. I might have said something like, "We need more sugar," and she'd nod. She'd tell me, "We're low on the milk in the fridge," and I'd go pick up more. Nothing special, just the daily back and forth. Around noon, I noticed the flashlight I kept in the basement was acting up. Flickering. The basement light itself was busted, so I used the flashlight to check the furnace or rummage for spare pans. I thought I'd change the batteries. I knew I had some extras in the storeroom. That's where we kept a lot of random stuff, cleaning supplies, boxes of lids, sugar, coffee sacks. We stored extra tablecloths there, too, from when we used to host bigger events. I wasn't expecting anything strange. Just needed batteries. I remember feeling a slight headache behind my eyes. Maybe from the oven heat, or maybe I was just tired. I walked down the hall toward that storeroom, passing through the back kitchen where the dish station was. Dishes were stacked high, somebody needed to dry them. I didn't see the kid around. I thought, he's probably taking a break or stepped out for a minute. My wife was somewhere up front, presumably. The door to the storeroom was closed. Nothing unusual about that. I reached for the handle. Looking back, there's no reason I should have suspected a thing. We'd had a quiet day. I hadn't seen any odd looks between them, or any tension in her eyes. If there were signs, I missed them. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. I was in a mood to keep my head down. Sometimes in marriage, you learn to let small annoyances lie. I thought it was just that, a normal lull. I figured maybe we'd go on a short vacation soon. We'd done that once, drove down to the coast. She loved the ocean. Maybe I was planning something like that in the back of my head, a surprise trip. Can't recall if that was on my mind exactly, but I do remember thinking we needed a break. Truth is, I don't recall what I was thinking right before I turned that doorknob. Probably nothing. Maybe I was just focusing on the batteries. It's crazy how life changes in 1 second. But that second was coming, and I had no idea. The storeroom itself was dimly lit, even when the overhead bulb was on. We kept it half off most of the time to save electricity. My eyes always had to adjust. The smell of coffee beans was strong, along with the dusty smell of cardboard boxes. I heard a rustle inside, but I figured maybe someone was moving sacks around. We'd gotten a shipment of beans from a new supplier. I didn't knock. I never knocked on that door. Why would I? It was my place. So I pushed it open. Quiet. Didn't even squeak that day. Wish it had squeaked so they'd hear me. Inside I saw them. My wife, her back turned. The kid, half on his knees, his cap on the floor. Her skirt was bunched up. She was perched right on the coffee sacks. The two of them were so close, it almost looked like one shape. For a second I froze. Time slowed down. I couldn't make sense of it. Then I realized exactly what was going on, and it felt like a punch in the gut that drained all the blood from my head. She turned her face my way, and he did too. Their eyes went wide. But nobody moved. Nobody screamed or scrambled to fix themselves. It was like we were all ghosts. The overhead bulb flickered once. I stared. They stared back. I didn't say a damn word. Just closed the door, careful not to make a sound. Walked away. I remember the feeling in my chest, heavy, like a cinder block pressing down. My hands shook, but I jammed them in my pockets. I didn't want to see if they were trembling or not. I guess I already knew. I kept walking, out the back hall, out the side door, to the alley. Didn't even grab the batteries. Stood there with my forehead against the brick, breathing. All I could think was that I couldn't breathe. But eventually I did. Not sure how long I stood out there. Maybe a minute, maybe 5. But when I came back inside, I went straight for a spare flashlight in the front cabinet. Like it was part of some plan. Like I was just a guy doing normal chores. I felt separate from myself. She wasn't in sight. The kid wasn't either. Didn't matter. I had my flashlight. I went to the basement anyway, flicked it on, pretended to check the furnace. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to break something, but I didn't. I stayed down there a while, leaning against the cinder block wall, letting the cold seep into me. Listening to the hum of the pipes. I knew everything had changed, but I didn't know how to handle it. One thing was for sure, I wasn't going to do it with shouting or smashed plates. That's not who I am. Never was. That evening, I closed up earlier than usual. Didn't make a show of it, just flipped the sign to closed, and locked the door. Most of the bread was sold out anyway. She was behind the counter, wiping it down. The kid was in the back, I guess. Nobody said anything. The place was quiet except for the fridge humming. I grabbed the register's cash tray, brought it into the office. My heart was still thumping like I'd run a marathon, but outwardly I was calm. I counted the bills, wrote down the totals in the ledger. We had a small safe in there. I shoved the money in, locked it up. The routine felt mechanical. She came to the doorway, hovered like she wanted to speak. I didn't look up. My neck felt stiff. I knew she was standing there, searching for words. But she didn't say them. I kept going with my counts. After a minute, she walked away. I heard footsteps fade down the hall. Maybe she went to talk to him, or maybe she went to the car. I stayed put. I was afraid if I looked at her, it would all come crashing out. That might have been the moment to have it out, demand answers, break down. But I couldn't. Something in me locked up. I could only operate in short tasks. Count the money. Lock the safe. Turn off the office light. I guess that was my survival mode. One step at a time. Eventually, I stood up and walked to the back. I found him by the dish sink, stacking plates. He wouldn't look at me. Probably trembling, but I didn't care. I stared at him for a good 10 seconds. Then I said, "Take off your apron." He did. He set it on the counter, eyes on the floor. I didn't ask him a single question. Didn't want his story. Instead, I pulled some bills from my back pocket, money I'd set aside, and shoved them into his hand. I said, "Put gas in the truck. It's a long drive to your home state." He looked up, startled. I went to the office safe, got the key to my old truck, the one I was planning to sell. Walked back, tossed the key on the counter beside him. "Take it," I said. "Don't come back, son." He didn't protest. Didn't argue. He glanced at me like he wanted to apologize, or maybe beg. But I guess he saw something in my face that told him not to. Slowly, he picked up the key. Nodded. Whispered, "All right." That was it. No shouting, no big drama. He walked out. Left the apron there on the sink. I stood there a moment, listening to the echo of the back door closing. Looked around at the quiet kitchen, stacks of clean plates, a pot of coffee that had gone cold, the sweet smell of baked bread lingering. The place we built day by day. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or rage or both. But I knew one thing, the kid was gone now, and that was exactly what I wanted. I'd done something final, and it felt surreal, like ripping a bandage off in slow motion. I turned off the lights, locked up the kitchen door. Outside, the sky was that dim purple you get just after sunset. Parking lot was empty except for my wife's car. She was in the driver's seat, engine off, staring straight ahead. I slipped into the passenger side, said nothing. She started the car, we drove home in total silence. 15 minutes. Maybe 20. No radio, no talking. When we got to the house, I went straight to the bedroom. Pulled open the closet, took out some blankets. She followed me, tried to catch my eye. "We need to," she started. I cut her off by stepping past, heading to the front door. I walked out onto the porch, set up the old armchair that sat there. Threw the blankets on it. She stood in the doorway, uncertain. I went back inside, grabbed my shotgun from the cabinet. It wasn't loaded, but she didn't know that. I walked back to the porch, placed the shotgun on the floor beside the chair. Sat down. She stood in the threshold a few seconds, then closed the door behind her. I heard her footsteps move away. I didn't plan on sleeping in the porch chair. But I sure as hell wasn't going to sleep in our bed, not that night. Everything felt raw. I stared out at the front yard, half expecting the kid to come back in that truck, or for something else to happen. Could have been anger, or heartbreak, or fear. Hard to say. But I kept that gun close. Just in case. The night was cool. Mosquitoes buzzed around. I pulled the blanket tighter. Listened to the distant croak of frogs, and thought about all the years we'd spent together. How many nights we'd gone to bed side by side, how many mornings we'd shared coffee. Now it felt like a different life. Like I'd stepped into someone else's shoes. At some point, I must have dozed off. My neck was stiff in the morning, my lower back on fire from the bad angle of the chair. I blinked awake to see her inside, through the window, moving around the kitchen. She saw me see her and paused. I turned my gaze away. It wasn't a standoff exactly. More like the calm after an explosion, when the debris is still settling. Later, she came to the porch. I half expected her to speak. But she just stood there with her hand on the doorknob. Maybe she saw the lines on my face, the gun by my side, the anger or sorrow or emptiness. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Walked back inside without a word. I listened to the screen door squeak shut. The day passed slow as molasses. We didn't talk. I showered, changed, drove back to the bakery to open. She stayed home. I told her, "Take the day off." She didn't argue. She didn't come to the bakery, didn't call, didn't text. I was alone with customers, but I managed. People asked, "Where is she?" I said, "She's not feeling well." They nodded, accepted it. No one pried. When I got back that evening, she was on the couch. She looked at me, opened her mouth to say something, but I walked right by. Went into the bedroom, shut the door, lay down on the bed in my clothes, stared at the ceiling. My brain was like a film reel stuck on one frame, them on the coffee sacks, his cap on the floor. The memory wouldn't budge. I just waited for it to fade. It never did. We spent the next few days like that, two strangers under the same roof. Quiet. Careful. We lived in separate orbits, bumping into each other in the hallway now and then, but never speaking more than a few words. The air felt thick, like a storm was stuck in the rafters. I didn't know if we'd explode or just rot. Meanwhile, I made sure the kid was gone for good. Called around, found out he'd left town. That was all I needed to know. I didn't break anything, didn't raise my voice. I thought about that, how men in movies always smash a plate or punch a wall. But I couldn't do it. Something in me snapped shut, like a lock. I kept everything inside. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was pride. All I knew was, there was no going back to how we were. We'd crossed a line, or she had, or we both had. No matter what she said now, it wouldn't fix the image burned in my mind. The days dragged. 3 or 4 of them in silence. I don't recall which. We still shared the same house, the same bed sometimes, though I often drifted to the couch or that porch chair when sleep wouldn't come. She tried once or twice to reach out to talk. I shut her down. I'd hold up a hand, turn my head, or just walk away. I couldn't handle the idea of listening to excuses, or half-lies, or confessions. I was afraid if she started talking, I might lose my composure and do something I'd regret. In the bakery, I told folks she was taking time off to help a sick relative. That was a lie, but I didn't care. I had to keep the place running. Life goes on whether your heart's in it or not. Kneading dough, setting timers, greeting customers, none of it felt real. I'd catch myself mid-task, forgetting what I was doing, with my mind back in that storeroom. Couldn't make sense of it. Couldn't figure out how the woman I'd known all these years could do that. But it's not like people wear signs when they're about to throw everything away. Eventually, she came back to work. We moved around each other like coworkers who don't get along. Polite, businesslike, but hollow. The regulars noticed. Some asked if everything was all right. We both said yes, forced small smiles. I saw her trying to appear normal in front of them, flipping on that cheerful voice she used to have. The minute they left, her face would fall. It broke me inside to watch. But I held steady, refused to crack. Around that time, I started sleeping worse than ever. My head spun with too many thoughts. I'd stand in the bathroom at night, splash water on my face, stare at myself in the mirror. Old lines, tired eyes, a man who felt used up. Sometimes I'd go outside, just to be away from the walls that held too many memories. Sat on the porch steps under the moon, breathed in the scent of the pines, and wondered if I'd ever trust her again. The answer, deep down, was probably no. But it wasn't that simple. We had a life. We had a home and a business. We had bills and routines. We had a marriage that had lasted years. It's not easy to toss all that aside in one day. We went on like that for a while. Then she got sick one morning, ran to the bathroom, threw up. I heard her retching. At first, I thought it was something she ate. Then it kept happening. Another morning, more sickness. A thought started creeping into my mind, but I refused to entertain it. I stayed out of the house as much as I could, worked longer hours, told employees I was taking on extra baking tasks. She looked pale, tired around the eyes. She'd come in late, leave early. People whispered, "Maybe she's pregnant." But I pretended not to hear. Then she missed a few more days, said she had the flu. One evening, after closing the bakery, I went home and found her in the kitchen, eyes red like she'd been crying for hours. She saw me, and there was this thick silence. I knew what was coming, but I just stood there, arms limp at my sides. She said, "We need to talk." I didn't move. She said, "I'm pregnant." I felt something break inside me. I wasn't even shocked. Part of me had been bracing for this. I just stared at her, seeing the fear in her eyes. And for the first time since that day in the storeroom, my voice came out, low and hollow. "Mine?" She winced. Tears welled up. Didn't say yes or no. Didn't need to. The air between us felt like poison. From there, things only got heavier. The doctor confirmed it. She was about 2 months along, maybe a little more. The timeline wasn't in my favor. I did the math in my head and kept track of the weeks. Each time she mentioned anything about the baby, I'd freeze. But I didn't leave. I guess part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was mine. Or maybe I wanted to see if she'd do something drastic. But she didn't. She tried to apologize. She tried to promise me it would be okay. I kept silent. I took her to doctor's appointments, sat in waiting rooms, nodded at the nurse. They assumed I was the happy father. She never corrected them. The bakery ran on autopilot in those months. I kept everything afloat. She did what she could. We had to maintain some facade, or maybe we just got used to living a lie. We barely speak at home, but in front of customers, we tried to act normal. Nights were the worst. She'd go to bed early, rubbing her belly. I'd stay up, watch the late show, or stare at the ceiling. Sometimes I'd hear her crying. I'd clench my jaw and force myself not to go to her. The pain in my chest was constant, like a bruise that wouldn't heal. Her belly grew. People started congratulating us. They'd say, "You two must be thrilled." Or, "Is it a boy or girl?" I played along. Nodded, forced a half smile. I was good at lying by then. She'd smile too, but there was always this flicker of sadness in her eyes. We never said out loud what we both suspected, that the timing lined up with the day I caught them. You don't forget details like that. I could see the guilt in her, but I never gave her a chance to talk it out. Maybe that was cruel of me, but I didn't care. My pride was cracked, my heart was numb, and I was angry in a quiet way that ran deep. Some nights, I told myself I'd leave. I even walked out to the porch with my keys. But I couldn't bring myself to do it, not yet. There was this sense of duty, or maybe stupidity. Maybe I needed to see how it all played out. So we went through the pregnancy in that tense silence. She'd have morning sickness, I'd hold her hair when she vomited if we happened to be in the same room. I'd help her stand up, bring her water. But not a single loving word passed my lips. I didn't scold her, didn't lash out. I just existed beside her, day by day. When the time came, I drove her to the hospital. I sat in the waiting area while she was in labor, arms folded, jaw clenched. Nurses asked if I wanted to come in. I stood up, paced, stared at the wall. Eventually, I went inside when it was almost over. That's how our daughter was born. I say our daughter, but the minute I saw those green eyes, I knew they weren't mine. My wife has brown eyes, I have gray-blue. Her hair is dark, mine is sandy. But the baby had a hint of red hair, green eyes. Just like him. All I could do was stare. Everyone around acted happy, congratulating me. I let them. I even held the baby. She was tiny, so fragile. I was terrified I'd drop her because my hands shook. I looked at my wife, and she was crying, maybe from the pain, maybe from seeing the expression on my face. The doctor asked if we had a name. I let her pick one. I wasn't in a state to argue. I don't even remember what she chose, just that it sounded pretty. I pretended everything was fine, smiled for the nurse's camera. But inside, I was dying every time I looked at that little girl. She was innocent, but she was a daily reminder. We went home a couple of days later. People sent gifts, flowers, onesies, all that. The bakery folks were supportive. My wife's face lit up a little when she held the baby. I tried to help with nighttime feedings, changed diapers, did the chores. Strangers might have thought we were a normal, happy family adjusting to a new child. But under the surface, we were drifting further apart. Those next months were a blur of baby cries and tension. I'd stumble around at 2 a.m, warming a bottle, stepping on squeaky floorboards. My wife would do her share, too. Sometimes we'd be up together, passing the baby back and forth in silence. She'd watch me with this sad look, like she was begging for something, forgiveness, maybe, or just a sign of life. I gave her neither. I functioned. I was a stand-in father for a child I suspected wasn't mine. But I never said those words aloud. Didn't see the point. I counted days. I remembered the date I fired that kid. I knew exactly how many weeks had passed since then. The math never let me forget. Every time the baby opened her green eyes, I felt a twist in my gut. I tried to push it down, but it was always there, a dark knot of betrayal. In public, I acted normal. Customers congratulated me, neighbors dropped off baby gifts, and I'd thank them politely. Inside, I was numb. As the months turned into a year, we fell into a routine. My wife was a good mother, no question. She devoted herself to the baby, cooing, rocking, singing lullabies. I watched from a distance. Occasionally, I'd catch a smile from the baby, and it felt like a small jab in my heart. I grew used to that pain, like a dull ache you carry around. Went to work, came home, tried to sleep. Rinse and repeat. Time passed. The baby learned to sit, to crawl, to stand. We never had a big blowout fight about anything. Maybe I thought eventually it would fade, or some new revelation would come. But it never did. We survived on surface-level chatter. I'd ask if we needed groceries. She'd say yes. I'd pick up the groceries. She'd do laundry and mention we needed detergent. I'd grunt and buy it. That was our marriage now, like coworkers sharing a space. At some point, I started planning to leave for real. It wasn't a conscious decision one day. It grew slowly, like a seed. I'd lie in bed at night, thinking how I couldn't do this for decades more. Couldn't look at that little girl's green eyes and pretend every part of me was fine. Couldn't keep watching my wife bury her sorrow in motherly devotion, hoping I'd come around. I just couldn't. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was heartbreak. I don't know. But I felt the need to escape. I started putting money aside. Quietly sold off some equipment we didn't use. Opened a separate bank account in my name. Day by day I saved. I had no plan exactly, just the urge to get out. The problem was the bakery. It was our livelihood, and it was also her future. But I couldn't just leave it to her. We had family. My nephew had been sniffing around the idea of taking over. Fine, let him have it. He was decent with numbers, had some hustle in him. We started discussing a possible transfer. He asked me why. I gave him a half answer about being tired, needing a break. He nodded. Never asked for details. My sister was also in the picture. She lived nearby, had always been supportive from a distance. I'd never told her the truth about the baby. I just told her I was feeling restless, maybe wanted to move. She said, "If you need someone to keep the house in the family, I can help." I took her up on it. Started filing the paperwork to put the house in her name, though I stayed quiet about it with my wife. I was methodical, careful. I didn't want drama. The little girl turned 3. I remember the small party we had, just a couple of neighbors with kids, some cupcakes from the bakery, a few balloons. She blew them out with help from her mother. Everyone clapped. I hovered in the corner, clapping too, forcing a smile. The kid was adorable, I won't lie. She had that bright red hair, those inquisitive green eyes. She liked to pull on my pant leg, calling me Daddy. Each time, it sliced me open inside. But on the surface, I kept it together. Shortly after her 3rd birthday, I finalized the paperwork. I signed over the bakery to my nephew, or most of it, anyway. Gave him controlling interest. Put the house in my sister's name. quietly closed my secret bank account, and took the cash out. I had it all in a thick envelope. My plan was simple: disappear. I'd leave them the house, let them keep whatever they needed. I just wanted to walk away. Didn't want any legal fights, didn't want any claim on the place or the business. Didn't want to be reminded every day of what I'd seen in that storeroom. The night before I left, I wrote a note. Kept it short. Something like, "You're a good mother. But I won't stay here just to remember. Goodbye." I folded it, tucked it in an envelope, left it on the kitchen table. I didn't tell anyone except my sister, who understood I needed space. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. I packed a bag with clothes, some personal items, took my truck keys, well, not the old truck I'd given away, but a different one we'd gotten after that. Then I stepped outside. The sun wasn't even up yet. I paused at the threshold, hand on the doorknob, just for a second. The house was dark. I could hear faint breathing from the bedroom, where she slept. I pictured the baby sleeping in her own room. Thought about going to say goodbye, but I couldn't. I shut the door gently, careful not to make a sound. Then I got in the truck and drove away. Didn't look back in the mirror. I remember the road was empty, the sky turning light in the east. I felt no excitement, no relief. Just a strange calm. I headed south. Drove for hours. Stopped only for gas and to grab a burger, though I barely tasted it. I crossed state lines, not sure exactly where I'd end up. Just wanted to be somewhere far from everything. At some point, I reached the outskirts of Savannah. Saw a sign for a trailer park near a marshy area. The monthly rent was cheap. I pulled in, parked. Talked to the manager. Gave him cash for the first month. And that's where I stayed. I've been here ever since. A few years now. Just me in this little trailer by the water. I like to fish in the morning. Sometimes the sun glints off the marsh in a way that almost makes me forget the past. I sit on a folding chair by the shore, cast my line, wait. Sometimes I catch something, sometimes not. Doesn't matter. I like the quiet. There's a convenience store down the road, sells bait and basic groceries. I don't drink. Don't feel the urge. I'm not sure if that's discipline or just emptiness. I've done odd jobs around here, helping folks fix their roofs, or painting shutters. They pay cash, I take it, keep my needs simple. I'm not lonely, exactly, but I'm not happy either. Just existing. Some nights, I stare up at the tin ceiling of the trailer, listening to the frogs outside, and I think about her, about that little girl. Wonder if she's riding a bike now, or starting kindergarten. Probably. She might be taller, hair even redder. Maybe my wife cut it short, or put bows in it. I don't know. I'll never know. Sometimes I hope they're doing well, that she found a real father figure who loves them. Other times, a bitter voice inside me says, "You're glad you left." I guess both can be true. People here don't ask many questions. They see a quiet old guy, keeps to himself, pays rent on time, fishes at dawn. Now and then, one of the neighbors might invite me to a cookout, share a beer. I usually decline. I'm not rude about it. I just say, "Got something to do?" Or, "Not feeling great." They don't push it. We're all drifters in a way, living in trailers by a marsh. Everybody's got a story, and nobody wants to pry. That suits me. I haven't heard from my wife directly. Or ex-wife, I guess. We never finalized the divorce on paper, but as far as I'm concerned, it's over. My sister sends me a letter once in a while, says the bakery's still running. The house is fine. The little girl's healthy, sweet. She asks if I want pictures. I tell her no. It's better not to see. Those green eyes would kill me all over again. She respects that. Doesn't push. Sometimes, though, I see them in my dreams. Or maybe it's a memory that sneaks in at night. The storeroom, the sacks of coffee, the boy's cap on the floor. Then the baby's face, those eyes that weren't mine. I wake up in a sweat, heart pounding. I sit up, flick on the lamp, rub my temples. Remind myself that life is gone. This is me now. I still feel that cinder block on my chest sometimes, but it's lighter than it used to be. It doesn't crush me like before. Time did something, I guess. Not healing, exactly, but dulling the edges. I wonder if she thinks about me. Maybe she's forgotten me altogether. Or maybe she hates me for leaving. Sometimes I catch myself missing her laugh, the way she used to tease me when I got flour on my nose. But then I remember that day, that door opening, the stale air in the storeroom, the light bulb flickering. I remember their faces, locked together like I was a ghost. That memory never fades, no matter how hard I try. I don't think it's about pride. I'm not holding on to some macho grudge. I just couldn't stay in a place where every corner reminded me of that single moment. People can say I ran away. Maybe I did. But I think I saved myself from going mad. If I'd stayed, I might have turned into a bitter old drunk. Might have taken it out on her or the kid. I'm not that man. I made my choice quietly, and I'm living with it. Most days I keep my mind on simple things, which bait to use, how the weather's looking, whether I can patch the trailer's roof before the next rain. But every so often, the old thoughts creep back in. I picture that tiny baby in my arms, the way she smelled like milk and soap. I picture her green eyes looking up at me like I was her world. That tears me apart in a way I can't explain. Because I know I'll never be there for her. Didn't want to be the father who half loves his kid. She deserves better than that. So here I am, 50-something, single, living in a trailer by the marsh. If you told me 20 years ago this would be my life, I'd have laughed. I used to have a wife, a business, a home. Now I have some fishing gear, a hot plate, a bed that squeaks, and a table where I drink my morning coffee. But at least I can breathe. At least nobody's lying to me in my own house. Maybe that's enough. Once in a while, I drive out to a bigger grocery store a few miles down the highway. I see families there, parents wrangling toddlers, loading up the cart. I see fathers lifting kids to grab cereal boxes. It stings, sure, but I just keep walking. That's not my life anymore. I chose a different path. Doesn't matter if I regret it or not. The choice is made. When people ask me, "You ever think of going home?" I say, "I'm fine here." And that's mostly true. I won't go back, because I can't face those memories, can't face that day in the storeroom. I don't have the energy to pretend I'm okay when I'm not. This is who I am now. The man who walked away. The man who slept on the porch with a shotgun the night he found out. The man who gave a kid money for gas instead of shooting him. The man who let his wife keep everything, because he didn't want it anymore. I fish, I eat, I sleep. Sometimes I remember. That's the sum of it. Do I wish it had been different? Sure. But life doesn't always give you a second chance. You make your choices and you live with them. I still feel that quiet ache, but it's my companion now. And that's the truth, neighbor, no fancy words about it. It happened. I left. End of story. And that's all I got to say.